Hello and welcome to Utah Studies. Today we're going to learn about Chapter 3. And before we get started, we are learning about prehistoric American Indians as opposed to historic American Indians. Real quick, here's your book. This much is dedicated to historic, and we'll just say the last 1,000 years, even a little sooner than that. And this much of your book is dedicated to the last 20,000 years. Why does 20,000 years get so little of the book? Because they didn't write it down. And if you don't write things down, history doesn't love you. I'm sorry. So today we're learning about prehistoric Indians and prehistory, and then next time we'll learn about historic Indians. Let's get into it. Okay, how do we know anything at all? Well, the answer is artifacts. And who digs for artifacts? Archaeologists. And so most of what we know about the prehistoric Indians come from artifacts found in Danger Cave and Hogup Cave. Make sure you know what an artifact is and the difference between an artifact and a fossil. Also today, we're going to learn about Paleo-Indians. Now, Paleo-Indian is the first people, maybe even the people that crossed the land bridge. We're talking people 12, 15,000 years ago, and we don't know that much about them, okay? They don't write things down. You have to find stuff about them, meaning by digging, so that's what we know. But we do know people lived as hunter-gatherers. And when you transition from hunter-gatherer to agriculture, basically when you go from movement to sedentary lifestyle, that changes the game, and we'll talk about it. What's an addle? It's a little vocab word they want you to know. You'll learn about it coming up soon. So make sure you write some of this down in your notes. I'll give you a second to do that. All right, let's get going. Here's a video, and it's talking about the division of labor. So let's watch the video, and then let's chat.
Humans as we know them have been walking around for about 200,000 years. Yet despite having bigger brains and finer hands, we continue to behave as our predecessors had. This was a nomadic lifestyle, following herds, gathering wild plants and fruits along the way. Then about 10,000 years ago, we came to a divide. On this side, we had the nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle we'd always known. On the far side, we had settled agriculture. The differences between these two are simple, but, as we shall see, they have lasting implications. As a nomad, you must find your food. Since you must find your food, you must move before your food sources are depleted or before your food wanders off. Since you must be able to move, you can only store as much food as you can carry. Storage is particularly difficult because as a nomad, you eat mostly meat, which has a high nutritional value but is difficult to preserve and store. Now let's look at the other side of the divide. As a farmer, you make your own food. In fact, you can produce more food than you can eat. This is called a surplus. Since growing crops takes time, you must stay put to care for your plants. Since you're not going anywhere anyway, you have the option of storing lots of food. And storage is made easy because as a farmer, you eat very little meat, but a lot of grains, which have a low nutritional value, but are very easy to preserve and store. So when droughts hit, and the hunting is bad, nomads must move along or starve to death, while farmers can survive off the surpluses they stored. Yet there are other effects of agriculture besides mere survival. The most obvious is that when you have more food, you can make more people. And because one farmer can feed several people, this makes possible the division of labor. Now, instead of every man being a hunter-gatherer, concerned only with getting food for himself, now one can be a baker, another a carpenter, another a soldier. With specialization come new technologies. And these technologies allow us to produce even greater surpluses in larger populations. The greater the surplus one farmer can produce, the more labor can be divided, allowing for more improvements in technologies, which allow for still greater surpluses and even larger populations. This is what is called a positive feedback loop. We can see the results clearly. These days, a single farmer, with the aid of technology, can feed thousands. With all these surpluses, the world's population has passed 7 billion. Now, as well as carpenters and bakers, we have firemen, doctors, and astronauts. It should be clear by now how settled farmers ended up displacing nomads. But just for fun, let us compare a Roman soldier to a barbarian warrior. The barbarian warrior grew up eating nutritious meat, allowing him to reach his full growth potential. The Roman soldier, with his diet of bread and olives, seems malnourished by comparison. He's small, he's fat, and it looks like he's about to get creamed. But because agriculturalists can support a larger population, there are more Roman soldiers than barbarian warriors. Moreover, they're all specialists. Freed from the need to feed themselves, they have spent all their time mastering the art of soldiering. And because they're all specialists, they can develop new technologies. The barbarian warrior doesn't stand a chance. This sort of dominance would be impossible without the massive surpluses of food.
Okay, so let's go back. Hunter-gatherer times. I'm a hunter-gatherer, you're a hunter-gatherer. What do you do for a living? You hunt, you gather. What do I do for a living? I hunt, I gather. Okay? Now, I'm a farmer. And I can plant food for 50 people. And I can feed all of you. So you don't have to hunt and gather as much. What do you do now? You're a soldier, you're a baker, you're a candlestick maker, etc., whatever you want to do. Well, if your job, all day long, all you do is bake bread, you'll develop new processes, new techniques, new technologies, and you'll make better bread, and you'll make more bread, and things like this. Same with being a soldier. If you've got all day to just practice your soldiering and develop new techniques, this leads to, that's the division of labor component. Now you've got a guy, all he does is a soldier. All this person does is a baker, as opposed to a tribe where everybody's hunting and gathering. And so they're going to have a strategic advantage through specialization. Does that make sense? All right, here we go. Prehistory, it means before history. It happened, but history is a little bit of a story. If you don't write it down, you don't get love, okay? I'm sorry. Native people did not write down their history. Our history is 250 years old. Native history, 10,000 years plus, okay? There's no concept of the term Utah up until very recently, okay? There was just this land out here, and eventually there'll be a tribe called the Ute tribe, but there's no Utah. Even when I show you, we'll get to it in a minute, when it was the state of Deseret, and then it's cut down, and then Utah's a territory, and it's this big, and then it's cut down, and then Utah's a state, and it's this size. And so I want you to understand that the Utah we know is not the Utah that they would have known. They would have just known this land out by a great lake, something along those lines, okay? It's the end of the Ice Age. The food sources have changed. People are coming down. What's that called? The theory of how people got to North America. Land bridge theory. Good job. All right. You have to adapt or migrate. And that's what we're going to be talking about. People that are adapting, creating new technologies, or moving somewhere else where it's easier to live. So real quick, the Mammoth Mart. This is the Walmart of the day. The Mammoth not only feeds your family, as it says here, 24 people for an entire winter, but this is your house. This is your tools, your oils, you know, your energy, meaning that. It's your clothing, okay? You need this mammoth to survive. And when it goes away, you got to adapt and move and migrate and create new technologies, start hunting faster animals, okay? You're not going to be able to use a spear. Maybe you need a bow and arrow. And that's, so as the game changes, you've got to change your game. All right, hopefully that makes sense. We briefly touched on this earlier. Archaeologist, a person who studies history through artifacts and physical remains. This is how you get history. Someone digs in the dirt, finds either fossils or finds artifacts in this case, and then they start speculating and theorizing, who are these people? Oh, look, we found this, that proves this, or we found that, that proves that that wasn't the case. And over time, they develop a story about how these people lived, who these people were, and that's how and then they write it down, and that's history. So in this, Well, let's say this guy right here finds an important artifact, and then he writes a book about it. Would his book be a primary or a secondary source? Okay, the artifact itself is a primary source, but then the books that come about that are usually secondary sources. Does that make sense? I hope it does. We'll cover it all year long, don't worry.
Is a bit on the slow side.
But at least there's lots of parking.
The office can be a bit on the quiet side. The accommodation's pretty rustic. But you get to meet the greatest friends of your life.
So this is a typical dig, especially in the Near East, where we have a group of workmen who are helping a set of students from Keele University with their excavation. You can see they're using things like hand shovels and trowels because the work is quite delicate. We don't want to go through anything. So here they're actually clearing away some roof deposits from the building where it collapsed. And you can see it's an absolutely spectacular place to be working. You never know what you're going to dig up, and it's just nice and calm and peaceful. But you get those moments where it's very exciting when you find that thing, that special thing, whatever it might be, some kind of amazing human burial or some amazing find. And it's about setting it all in context. It's never about the one find. It's never about the one thing. It's about what it means as a whole.
So on excavations, often you live very close to the site. So for example, at this site they have tents and they sleep here at night and they walk just over to the site, which is very close. And you live with a team, you have to get on with everyone, everyone chips in, you make food, you sleep here, and you have amazing stars at night, the scenery, the whole sort of being outdoors and sort of roughing it a little bit. It kind of adds to the excitement of the job. So I first started getting interested into archaeology when I was 11 and I visited the pyramids in Egypt. And then I went on to do it as an undergraduate at university, went on to do a master's, been on many excavations and really just got into it, and the field work is one of the best aspects of archaeology. So you get a lot of travel and you learn about different cultures.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that video about archaeology. To me, that would be an excellent job because you're outside. It'd be fun to explore. Most famous archaeologist ever? And who's the most famous archaeologist ever? Indiana Jones. We love Indy, don't we? I hope so. All right, so Danger Cave, Hogup Cave. Most of what we know about Utah's prehistoric people are found in these caves, and they're not that big. Take a look at the photo on the left. You can kind of see the opening. And basically, as you dig down, you go further back in time. It's sort of like a time capsule. Okay, so when you dig all the way to the bottom, you're 11,000 years into the past. Pretty nuts. Okay, we're talking about Paleo-Indian. You can see it here on the left on the graph. In a minute, we'll talk about Archaic Indians. These are all prehistoric Indians, okay? All the way, when we get to the modern tribes, that's next chapter. So these are all prehistoric. Then you got your Fremont and ancestral Pueblo, and then and they're all the ancestors of the modern tribes. Okay, so the Paleo-Indians basically is a term, if you don't know much about them, but you know somebody was here, the first Indians, you just say Paleo-Indian. That'll cover your bases, okay? They're the first people in North America. They survived by gathering pine nuts. You can see the mammoths, maybe they were killing those. They were hunting big game. Look at that guy over on the left. It looks like a camel. Isn't that crazy? And they've got the Clovis point, so very rudimentary arrowhead, okay? Then people come down into Utah. We're gonna call them the Archaic Indians, desert gatherers. They're gonna have wiki-ups and an addle-addle. We'll talk what that addle-addle is in just a second. What does vertical migration mean? What do you think? It means in the summer, they're going to go up into the mountains where it's warm and there's water and there's game. But in the winter, it's too cold to live in the mountains. They'll come down into the valley. Good example of this is Cedar City. At Cedar City, you're about, 4,000 or 5,000 feet? Probably 4,000 feet. But you go up to Duck Creek, you're at 10,000 feet real quick. And so you can go up and down and get dramatic climate changes with not that much distance, okay? And so you'll go up and down, depending on what season it is, to maximize your food supply.
Welcome to the Anasazi State Park Museum in Boulder, Utah. These are two different types of atlatls. They're weapons that predated the bow and arrow. Using leverage, an individual could throw a dart with far more force than simply throwing it by hand. Today we're having an atlatl competition to celebrate the opening of our 2,000-year-old atlatl exhibit. This atlatl was discovered in 1985 in Snow Canyon State Park, which is about 200 miles from Boulder, Utah. We know how old it is from using radiocarbon dating. This atlatl is about 900 years older than the Combe site, which is outside the museum.
Hold it with these two fingers, with these three actually, and then with these two fingers you're going to hold the atlatl like that. But however it feels comfortable, you kind of just want to hold it tightly in your hand and hold this tight against the edge there until you release. And it's not too hard. And then when you throw, you're going to just throw like this, just okay, keeping your elbow out and throw, how they say, like a girl. You know, you throw it like a girl.
What do you think of that, atlatl? It's pretty cool, right? Tempted to have us make one in class. We'll see. Don't hold me to that. Anyhow, Anasazi. Now we're getting the three sisters, corn, bean, and squash. This is what the Native Americans used primarily to survive in Utah. So if you've got a garden at home, corn, bean, and squash, that's your best chance of growing a nice garden. Now you're developing the bow and arrow. You've got your pit house, your cliff dwelling. Why do you develop the bow and arrow? We just talked about it a second ago. Okay, different game. Let's flip back real quick. You can see these guys are hunting mammoths. You've got a spear, but now you're going to be hunting something smaller, maybe a rabbit or something in the desert. I don't think you can get an antelope, maybe so. But anyway, you need a bow and arrow. Different game requires different technology. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. So now you've stopped your hunting-gathering lifestyle and you've moved into these cliff dwellings. This changes the game. Big deal, little deal, no deal, huge deal. Let's talk about it. Okay, when we're hunter-gatherer and we're not getting along, I can just go my separate way. Okay, those are your hunting grounds, these are my hunting grounds, and I'll just leave. But if you're not getting along and you live together and the food's in one place and it's been growing for months, you can't just leave the food, you'll starve. You got to stay with the food. So you got to stay with the tribe. Now you need rules. Which one of us is right? Now you need a judge or a mayor. This is the origin of society in many levels. Everybody happened to live together. Everybody happened to get along, codifying rules that the whole community can live by. So know this. They also, again, division of labor. Now you've got, we talked about baker and soldier, but now you can have art. You can have people that all I do is paint, or all I do is build things or make pots or whatever. Again, because they're not spending the whole time feeding themselves, okay? They're studying stars. They're awesome. By the way, the Anasazi disappear. Do you want to know why? You're going to have to read about it soon, okay? Fremont. They still farm the Three Sisters, but they're also hunting. They have pottery and art as well. There's a cool cave of the Fremont Indians. Again, they have great fishing at the Fremont State Park, just letting you know. So let's cover the prehistoric Indians that we've covered so far. What are the first prehistoric Indians? Put this in your head. You can use it anytime. Paleo Indians. Someone says first Indians, you should be thinking Paleo Indian. It's usually the answer. So just put that away. Okay. Then you've got what comes next. Who comes next? Archaic Indians, followed by the Anasazi and Fremont. Sound good? Okay, great. Next time we'll do the historic Indians. What word symbolizes the spirit of Utah? Industry. What does industry mean? The art of working hard and steadily. Sounds good? Excellent. Can you list 3 renewable and 3 non-renewable resources? I hope you can. What do archaeologists call the earliest group of people? Paleo-Indians. We just covered it. You got that right? Fantastic. Okay, put these in chronological order. Take a second. You got it? Paleo-Indians, Archaic, and then Fremont Anasazi. Very good. What's the device that delivers the spear with more speed and more accuracy? Atlatl. Very good. Oh, let's not skip this one. What 3 factors control climate? Latitude, distance from the ocean. What was the third one? Elevation, not altitude, elevation. Good job. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so that's the end of the first half of Chapter 2. Next time on Utah Studies. It's the second part of Chapter 2, coming up soon. Historic Indians. We'll see you there.